Okay, in the first video on clauses, we talked about a clause is a unit of grammar, and it contains a subject, which is what we're talking about, the who or what we're talking about, and it contains a predicate, uh, which begins with a verb, and tells us something about the subject. Okay, it can be anything. I mean, there's infinite number of sentences, or practically infinite number of sentences. So, in this video, I want to talk about clause characteristics. Clause characteristics. Okay, and these are different characteristics a clause can have. And don't bother memorizing all of these the first time you go through. You'll probably memorize them over time because we're going to talk about them over and over again. But if you're watching this for the first time, don't worry about memorizing them. You can, if you hear me use one of these terms, then you know you can come back here and look it up and go down, watch it, get to the point where I talk about it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. So, the first big one is main subordinate. Okay, so all clauses are either a main clause or a subordinate clause. And this is actually a fairly easy concept. A main clause can stand on its own as a sentence. Okay, a main clause is a complete thought. Okay, and therefore you can take any main clause and you can capitalize the first letter and put a punctuation mark on the behind the last word, and you have a sentence. Okay, so or you can combine multiple main clauses into one sentence. It doesn't have to be only one, but it can. Each of those main clauses you can break out and you can make its own sentence. A subordinate clause, and there are several different kinds of subordinate clauses, but a subordinate clause, there's something in the subordinate clause, either something that's missing in the subordinate clause or something interestingly enough that we've added to a main clause, which now causes it, which now results in it not being able to stand on its own as a sentence. It needs to be attached to either a noun phrase or a main clause, but there has to be a main clause somewhere else in the sentence to complete the meaning. Okay, so this cannot stand on its own, okay, as a sentence. And we'll spend most of the time in the beginning talking about main clauses, and so we get a good understanding of those. And then when we'll start doing subordinate clauses, you'll see how either what we've left out or what we've added makes them somehow an incomplete thought. Okay? So, types. There are 4 types of clauses, and I'm going to put them in order of popularity, at least in writing. Okay? And the declarative clause gives facts. So I have a car is a declarative clause. It's also a main clause. It can stand alone. Interrogative. Think interrogation, like on the cop shows. Interrogative. Okay. Asks for facts. Okay. And they can be something specific, who did that, in which the answer would be somebody's name. What is that? It's asking for an explanation of what you're looking at, supposedly what you and the person you're asking are looking at, or it can be a yes or no answer. Do I have a car? Okay, yes I do, or no I don't. Or do you have a car? Now, then we have the imperative. Like I say, we'll go through all of these in more detail, because declaratives are pretty easy. Interrogative, there's a lot of ways we can ask. We can structure a clause to ask for facts. The imperative gives commands, give me that, go away, don't do that, don't park here. Those are all commands. Those are all imperative clauses. And then finally, and this you'll see very seldom, exclamative. You'll see very seldom in written language. More so, these last two are more common in spoken English. Exclamative expresses surprise. What a lovely cake you brought me. Okay, is an exclamative sentence. Okay? And as the name might suggest, most exclamative sentences end with an exclamation mark. So, polarity. Okay? It's kind of a fancy word, but this is probably the easiest. Positive and negative, and I won't even bother putting a definition down. I have a car, I don't have a car. Go do that, don't go do that. Okay, so that's positive and negative, and every one of us has a positive and negative form, although the negative exclamative clause is pretty rare. They do exist. So have polarity. And then finally, finiteness. Okay, and this is a little technical, but it actually turns out to be pretty easy. And a finite clause has a verb, phrase with tense, number, and person. Okay? Tense, person, and number. And as you can probably read ahead, non-finite has a verb, phrase without tense, number, or person. Okay? So, in the beginning, this won't mean much, because as we start out, we're going to start out talking about main declarative or main interrogative sentences primarily, and all main declarative or main interrogative sentences are finite. So we will have somewhere in them we will have a verb with person, tense, and number. The imperative does not have a finite verb. Okay, it always uses the base form. We'll talk more about that. And the exclamative, again, if it's main, will have a finite. And exclamative clauses are almost always main clauses. So, okay, so it can be main or a given clause, and you know these can apply to all of them. Although some combinations you can't have a main declarative non-finite clause because then it wouldn't be main, but you can have a main declarative finite positive clause. You can have a subordinate declarative positive non-finite clause. Okay, so you can have any clause will have all four of these any clause will have all four of these characteristics. So again, don't worry too much about memorizing them. After we go through this, you know, we've spent a while doing it. These will all kind of become second nature. And again, they're fairly big words. They're fairly fancy words for actually what are actually pretty simple concepts. Okay, so with that, I will stop here and go make another video.